Talk Shoes.
Recorded live.
These are provisions, broadly and specifically with regards to infrastructure, that Republicans have traditionally supported broadly.
I suspect that one of the really big surges in the market for housing going forward is going to be the immigrant population.
But I don't, as a president, have the authority to go, if our national security is threatened, then you do it properly.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
This is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
Welcome to Liberty Cap Talk Live. This is your host, Todd Andrew Barnett, and his co-host, James Landreth Jr. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Liberty Cap Talk Live. We are now on the air, and we are about to bring on our guests on the air in a second here. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of our discussions tonight, we are going to do a lot of stuff. But first, I just want to let everybody know that there will not be any new rules or under commentary segment as I usually do on the show. Just haven't had the time to get them ready. Lots of stuff going on happening this week because of the results and whatnot, and family stuff. So it's the next week they'll be here. So having said all that, this week we're going to forego the new rules and those commentary segments. So let's get to it. I just want to remind my listeners to wear your Liberty caps. We are freeing ourselves from the control of the state. We are freeing ourselves from the control of the Republicans and Democrats. We're fighting them tooth and nail all the time, every day. No excuses. I mean it, folks. I'm going to bring my partner in crime, Jim Landreth Jr. here. Jim, you with us, bud?
Good evening, Todd. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
Outstanding.
Awesome. How was your week so far?
Pretty good. Got a lot done. Lots of meetings. Spent way too much time talking to people, but all in all, could have been worse. So I'm good with it.
Well, hey, we gotta do what we gotta do, right? Okay, let's bring our guest on the air, our panelist, that is. She is an activist and a great, wonderful friend of the Liberty Movement. She's an author. She has a wonderful discussion on that's coming out next week with a bunch of rape survivors. We've got that scheduled for next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. She's going to be giving me more info on that, and she's been active in the libertarian version of the Occupy movement to a very large extent, and a very big, strong activist all the way around. Please welcome my very good friend, Dawn Eckel. Dawn, you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you. Thank you, Todd. Nice to meet you, Jim.
Nice to meet you as well.
All right. Our next panelist here is a very good friend of ours in the Liberty Movement. She is well known in Liberty circles, bringing some information on what's going on with the state and with some very interesting stuff all the way around. Please welcome our very good friend, Ava Indiana. Ava, you with us?
Yes, I am. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, Ava. Hey. And also here, and finally, our third panelist here, who is with us. I believe he is a very active supporter of the Libertarian Party, and he and I have butted heads on Congressman Ron Paul and his presidency, and we've agreed to disagree, but we're still pals. We're still good friends in the Liberty Movement, and he's been more than ecstatic to come on the show to talk about his ideas, and he's been very active in the Liberty Movement for a number of years. And he's certainly not a Republican, but he's definitely a very strong Libertarian, especially on the capital L side, if I'm not mistaken. Please welcome my very good friend, Stephen Myers. Stephen, you with us?
Sure, I'm Todd. Nice to be here with you all.
And we have somebody from East Louisiana. Who's on the phone with us?
Shotgun Susie.
Shotgun Susie. Okay.
I'm a big activist in Louisiana, and I have been one of the big players in the Ron Paul movement down here for a long time.
Oh, well, I guess we'll add you as an honorary panelist tonight. If you like, we can keep you on the air since you've called in. I'll definitely agree to that. And okay, it's great to have 4 people. I was originally going to have 3, but hey, this is going to be a very lively discussion roundtable tonight. So, all right, let's get right to it. And by the way, just before we get into the discussions here, if you have any questions for our panel, it's 724-444-7444. Once again, the number is 724-444-7444. The call ID number is 91679, and then you hit #, and then all you got to do, if for a pin, just hit 1 and then #, and you're on cue. So there you have it. Okay. This week has been very, very energized, very interesting, to say the least. The debates, pretty shitty, if you ask me, all things considered. I mean, but at the same time, amusing. Let's think about it. You've got the candidates who are war. We've got to have war, right? We got to bomb them camel-humping Arabs in Iran because they're going to press the red missile button anytime. They're going to hit it hard. We got to strike back. We got to protect, our interests here in the United States. And I loved how in the Fox News debate, they really had so many neocons in the audience. And not to mention so many idiots in the CNN debates. I just could not stop taking my eyes off on the whole thing and roll my eyes to the point where I just wanted to gouge my fucking eyes out every single time those candidates were opening their mouths. Sans Ron Paul, I just couldn't stand these jokesters. Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, Mitt Romney, even Rick Perry before he dropped out. I just could not. I just wanted to, put a dunce hat on this guy and paint a Hitler stash on him. I mean, your assessment, everybody. of what these debates were this week prior to tonight's primaries. And by the way, we're going to be commenting on the primaries tonight because it's pretty clear of how very well rigged this entire system is. But first things first, the debates. Who is disgusted by them? Show of hands. How about you, Ava?
Oh, they were pretty non-substantive for sure. I did like some of the comments that Ron Paul made, especially the one that he made about the waste, embassy in Baghdad, that's bigger than the Vatican, and he called that military waste, a waste of money. And those were the programs that he wanted to end. I like that.
Right.
But other than that, most of them were the other candidates arguing about what they didn't do and what they did do,
Yeah, I loved how, Rick Santorum in one of the debates, I believe it was the debate 2 nights ago, when he said, well, Mitt Romney has Obama or his Romney Care that passed in 2006, and they're trying to say that I'm the bad guy here, but he'd have to go up against Barack Obama, and Barry's healthcare plan has become the blueprint of Mitty's plan in Massachusetts, so therefore Mitty's plan is better than Barack Obama's somehow. I mean, it's like you could hear the crickets chirping in the background. Like they couldn't even get that point through their heads, even if it bit them on the asses. Anybody care to share their thoughts on this? Go ahead, Stephen.
I could only tolerate it for so long, and then I turned it off. The Republican Party has been the party that's been leading us into the last series of wars, pretty much ever since, minus Kosovo, you might argue, but pretty much ever since the Vietnam War. This last one, the one in Iraq, they're talking, I think they said like $1 trillion down to go fight, and then there's about another $3 trillion back-end cost to it.
Right.
So, just a huge amount of money.
Right.
And so the one thing that's really obvious looking at these guys is they don't learn. You have an
they
obvious...
never learned a fucking thing.
You have this obviously huge mistake, and when you look at the economic cost of it, and it's like, oh, okay,
right,
let's do it again.
Could I, how I feel about the debate?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Chuck and Susan. Go ahead.
This is the way I look at it. I wait until it's all over, and then I watch Ron Paul highlights on the web. Because the others are just lying anyway, so.
Well, but this is the thing that really gets me about these guys. I mean, it's like, what these guys remind me of? They remind me of a very, very hyperactive Ronald McDonald who's become a serial killer and adopted the persona of Stephen King's It character. That killer clown in the book and the TV movie? I mean, these candidates look like serial killers in a sense.
No, the Burger King on meth.
Yeah.
No crown.
I mean, look at, serial killers like Ted Bundy and I guess, the guy who was the cannibal serial killer, I can't remember his name, fuck. But,
Hannibal Lecter?
Well, maybe Hannibal Lecter. Okay, we'll go with Hannibal Lecter. But it's disgusting. I mean, Don, your thought. I mean, you were telling me that Rick Santorum is backing the guys, who were part of the rape survivor abuse that you had to go through when you were young.
Yeah, what it was is they're fundamentalist religious group homes for children and teenagers, and when you have in the fundamentalist movement, you have your children that misbehave and won't follow the parents' protocol, and they're firm believers in corporal punishment, but their version of corporal punishment is different than ours. And if you can't get your kid to comply, the churches will compel them to, well, we know of this private home that we support, and they support them as missionaries under the guise of missionaries. And they send you to these homes, and right now there's 6 homes in Missouri. There's 219 homes in the United States. But with the organization I work, there's over 2,000 victims. Not all of them are rape victims. The majority are physical abuse. But when you've got 1 for every 10 that is a rape victim, it's not just a one-time incident. But his financial backers are tithing that people send into these churches, and they'll go push these candidates, and you'll hear them preach from the pulpit at night and remember this as a child.
Yeah, when we're talking about
right.
missionary,
we're not
talking about the missionary position. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
But
they actually enforce and send money, and you'll actually sound pulpit.
I'm sorry.
They'll up at the pulpit holler to support and finance. You need to support this candidate, and we're going to take up an offering, and they'll send it to them.
Right.
They do it all the time.
And, what I found particularly amusing about the CNN debate was, when John King launched his first volley of questions, the first question to Newt Gingrich about his wife. Remember his ex-wife coming forward on ABC News, telling, I think it was a 2020 edition or an ABC News edition, in which he says that, in which his ex-wife said that he was open to that he wanted an open marriage. And when John King asked about that, he goes, well, that story is a lie. It isn't true. It's false. And I'm disgusted that you would even answer me this on this as the first question for this debate. I'm like, excuse me, asshole. You're the one who went after Bill Clinton, who was getting head by an intern in the 1990s. You and your cronies, including, not to mention, Henry Hyde and the late Dennis Hastert and all the other Republicans in Congress were going after Bill Clinton because of his sex life, because he lied about his sex life, when you could have gone after him because of his foreign policy and his policy initiatives that were expanding the state. Now, I'm not saying that I love Bill Clinton personally, but to go after a man, to go after on his sex life, when he never pushed his personal morality on that issue, but you guys did, it's unconscionable and unthinkable. And you think that somehow you should be excluded from that? I mean, if you want an open marriage, fine. But you're running for president of the United States, and you think somehow that gives you an entitlement as in being protected from an open discussion on this? Are you fucking kidding me, Newt?
He's an intellectual. Come on. Intellectuals are way more important than the rest of the people.
So,
he's a
did you see the cartoon?
Go ahead.
Did you see the cartoon this week that, which basically said Newt Gingrich will love America until it gets cancer?
Oh, he'll definitely love America. No. I mean, this is a big problem. I mean, this guy. I mean, these candidates. I mean, look at for instance, I loved how Ron Paul actually nailed Rick Santorum on the TARP bailout. I loved how he went after him on the health care prescription bill. He basically had his talking points, and then when he uttered the golden rule, and as soon as he was finished with his golden rule sentence on Iran, you had a bunch of neocons going, "How dare you say this? I mean, you blaming America because of what we did in the Middle East." It's like, excuse me, you assholes. Okay? Take your heads out of your asses. These people are showing you that they're not fit for the presidency of the United States. At least Ron Paul has a military record. He was an Army medic. At least he served in war. He may not have carried a gun, but he was there tending to the wounded. Whereas you idiots, you yahoos, why don't you send your kids to fight your wars? How come you're not wearing a military outfit or togs and going to fight the war yourselves if you really believe in the sanctity of this holy crusade that you've got going on in the Middle East?
You need to tell
that's how they say how to end war.
In their hand.
You know how to end war, don't you? Send every congressman's son there.
Oh, I know. And I probably end up getting my head served on a platter for even suggesting this. But in a way, it kind of sort of makes me want to say that there should be a constitutional amendment that if you're going to run for president and you're going to commit our armed forces and our troops over to the Middle East and throughout the world, then you should have a military service and a record that shows exactly what war is like, that you've done the dirty deed yourself. Otherwise, you have no business in the Oval Office.
Right.
I just think that they need to go by the Constitution. I don't think it matters so much that we go to war. It's how we go to war that matters. Like we're going to war on what the president says. The president says go here, go there. Our country is, we're going to have wars, but let's do it, the way the Constitution says to do it, so that we don't get into these wars where we never come home and we're there for 10 years and we're killing all of these people and bombing, civilizations back to the Stone Age. We don't need that. I mean, let's go in and win the wars and then come home, instead of staying over there and nation building and everything else that we've been doing in the Middle East for, at least 20 years since Clinton that I can remember, and probably before that.
They have to nation build. They tear the nation to bits, and then they want to put all the money back into it to rebuild it.
Right.
In their own image.
Right. And, this is, and I thought it was pretty big that Trump was going after Ron Paul on the Second Amendment issue, that he voted. I mean, come on. That was the most opportunistic thing I've ever heard coming out of Rick Santorum's mouth.
Do you know what the whole deal was? Oh. You know why Ron Paul voted no on that bill? Do you know
Please
what that?
Enlighten us. Why?
Well, the bill was to make sure that the gun companies didn't get sued by the people, regular people, like, for, some people are trying to sue, like, for the gun killing another person, right? But this law went farther than that. It went to where you couldn't even sue the gun manufacturer for, products, that weren't up to standards. Say the gun blew up on you and it was a manufacturing mistake. You wouldn't even be able to sue the gun manufacturer for that. So Ron Paul believed that wasn't the right thing to do. Take the right of
And he is on the right side of that issue.
Right.
Because the reality is, why is it the gun manufacturers at fault if it's used in, say, a commission of a crime? Or if it's used in, say, to the point where there's no safety used. I mean, the person who holds the gun and uses it is responsible for how that weapon is used, not the gun manufacturer. And Rick Santorum. And Rick Santorum going off on his little judgmental pendulum, if you will, against Ron Paul on that talking point. He's basically arguing against the Second Amendment.
Right.
By pretending to be in favor
he's
of it.
Basically arguing against the right of the people to sue the manufacturer for a harm that it causes because of faulty manufacturing.
And the Second Amendment as well. I mean, he's arguing against that. He's also arguing against, protections for the gun manufacturer for liability. As you just said a second ago, Shotgun Susie, that that Ron was on the right side of this issue, because let's face it, gun manufacturers only sell what they're supposed to sell. They're there to make a profit off of every single gun they sell. Why should it be their fault if it's used in the wrong hands in the commission of a crime, as I've said before?
Exactly.
Or if it's
personal responsibility.
Well, so the issue there really is that
that's what the deal is.
Why do you treat a gun manufacturer any differently than you treat a pipe manufacturer, for instance?
Right.
Why would you say one industry should get special protections over another industry, or why should one industry be held liable for misuse of their product? Because if I go buy a pipe, I could hit somebody with it, or I could put it through your window. I mean, I could use a lot of illegal ways.
Right. That's like saying, because I overdosed on aspirin or Bayer, I should sue the pharmaceutical manufacturer Bayer or Merck or Pfizer because I improperly used their over-the-counter pill.
Are you
right? But if you did properly use it and it was tainted product, then you'd be completely in your rights to sue them for the damages.
And if it was good stuff, you'd be a stupid addict. Okay. The NAGR sent out questionnaires to all the candidates. Ron Paul's the only one that turned it in, and he scored 100%.
A+.
The rest of them even turned theirs.
Exactly. I wonder how Mitt Romney would have scored on that.
Oh,
I wonder how
the NRA scored him.
Or even Santorum.
You want to know how NRA scored him? I have the results for that.
Please tell us. Tell us.
Paul got an A+ from the NRA. Rick Santorum got a B-. Newt Gingrich got a C, and Mitt Romney got a D.
Mitt Romney, the person whom they thought won the Iowa primary several weeks ago, which has become news as well this week, too.
Yeah.
That Santorum somehow mysteriously and surreptitiously won the Iowa caucus several weeks later. I mean,
right.
and I mean, this whole charade that the votes were being tabulated correctly and fairly, and there was no fraud being committed whatsoever. Please give me a break. Give me a break. Yeah.
Dog and pony.
But you were going to say on the stone. Go ahead.
I was going to say that there was 131 counties that there was suspicion of voter fraud, and there was 8 missing counties. Caucuses of missing ballots, and they were from some of the biggest counties. These 8 missing. ballots, and they went behind. Karl Rove was there, and they went behind closed doors and did a gentleman's agreement. I mean, didn't we have enough of the hanging chads in Florida with, Karl Rove?
And I thought those chads were no longer in use ever since the 2000 fuck up in Florida. I mean, wow.
But what about the presidential votes that were not sent from overseas and the soldiers that voted, and they were, CNN had exposed that after it happened that there were thousands of used votes that were never even counted because they weren't even shipped and mailed till a month and a half after the election was over.
Exactly. Like, and this is my point of the Iowa caucus, is that somehow there was no fraud going on at the Iowa caucus. Please, spare me the bullshit, people. I am about this for weeks. I suspected it for weeks, but everybody didn't want to believe it. Everybody thought the process was being run correctly. Well, this week pretty shattered that illusion. I hate to rain on their parade, but it did.
Well, we need to get about voter fraud as we did about SOPA. We need to be angry about it and start calling our congressmen and our senators and raising hell at the voting. If we see voter fraud, we need to speak out against it and make sure that we're heard about it, because nothing's going to change unless there's anger in America over our votes. So.
And
amen.
Yeah, exactly. But
you need participation on that one, because the reality is you have to have people on the ground at all the polling places, so that when they're doing the counting there in the polling place, that you can separately tabulate and then check back, at the county and then the precincts and then up at the state level. And so if a party like the Libertarian Party wants to participate on that level, they're simply going to have enough people to turn out to essentially be poll monitors. And that's the way it works.
He was doing that in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it should be.
And what's really interesting about this is that I was looking at the the numbers tonight for tonight's primary. Now, this is a thing that gets me. I mean, since we're going to be talking about the primary tonight, because this pisses me off to no end. It's a repeat of what happened in Iowa, for fuck's sake. I mean, especially after 10, I guess maybe 5% or 6% of their precincts reporting. I'm telling everybody that Fox News, and I know CNN's done this as well, the major networks, including MSNBC, another guilty party in all this, they called it that Gingrich was the projected winner before all the precincts were reported in. Excuse me, but I thought you had to wait until all the precincts were done reporting, and then you could give the actual winner.
No. There's one. You want all the precincts to close and not have any more votes going on before you call the winner. Did they call it before the precincts were closed?
They called it. They said that Gingrich was the winner.
But it was after the polls were closed.
Yeah.
So it could not influence the voting.
Did you watch Iowa? How Ron Paul was winning the whole damn thing, and then all of a sudden he wasn't moving, and everybody else was screaming votes. Did you watch that?
And here's the interesting thing.
I mean, the rest of it goes is that these news organizations are polling people as they're going in. They have their own count, and once the actual votes come in, they're comparing their estimates against the count. I don't think you're going to see that big a difference in it.
Well, this is a big thing. Paul coming in fourth at 13%. He got over 77,000 votes, according to Fox News. Santorum getting 101,421 votes, 17%. Romney, 166,155, 28%. And 240,527 votes at a very, very solid 40%. Okay. I don't know about anybody else, but even though the polls closed at 7, they were not all the precincts reported in before the actual projector. I thought they had to wait in ballots. It would have made more sense that, say, 85 or 90% of the precincts were in, then they could actually call the projected winner who was going to win. But they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to get, fuck it, Gingrich is the winner. Let's go home, everybody.
I'm glad Gingrich won, actually. Because that just takes delegates away from Mitt Romney.
Ava, tell him how much delegates that Ron Paul's going to get between the two of them.
There's 564 delegates that'll be split between Mitt Romney and Ron Paul because they're the only ones on the ballots. So there's no way any of the rest of them are even going to get enough delegates to
win. It's over. It's a two-man race at this point. Figure it up.
It pretty much is. It pretty much is. Jim, my partner in crime. Jim, my partner in crime. Do you have any questions for the panel on this?
What do you think are the chances that maybe either Romney or Gingrich would pick Ron Paul as a running mate, and would he accept
either
of the two freaks?
Hell no, he won't accept. He's got too much integrity.
Well, I mean, one of the things that is interesting is if you look at the exit poll data, Ron Paul is winning the 18 to 20. I think it's 18 to 23-year-old group.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
And he's pretty close if he's not winning the 24 to 29-year-old age group.
Right.
You're looking at the people coming in, not the people going out. When we check out, and the good news is that is an indication of that the youth is looking for, a less restrictive society.
Right, but Stephen, keep in mind that they're not going to mention the exit poll on the Fox News channel itself. They're going to hide that.
It's all across CNN right now.
Well,
Communist News Network.
Communist News Network. Nothing. They're going to try and block it out of Fox News, but CNN, which surprisingly enough is kind of sort of favorable to Ron on the war issue. They are a little bit, depending on whom you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the interesting thing.
Anderson Cooper actually likes Ron Paul.
They're all
right.
In one of his off CNN reports on his actual Anderson show,
right.
Which CNN, that's and there's censored. There's only
right. This is what Fox News says. In which age group are you? And you were mentioning this, Stephen. 18 to 29. 22% supported Santorum of that age group.
Oh, my God.
16% supported Romney. 27% supported Rich. But 2% supports Ron Paul. That's a very big gap for Ron.
Well,
which is a total of 9%.
That should tell us something of where we need to go to get votes.
Right.
Somebody hanging out at the senior centers and stuff like that.
He needs to go to more of the MTV generation and get the youth vote more than, say, at the veterans groups, because the the old tired people on Social Security, they're not going to support Ron Paul. They're going to probably support Gingrich.
Yeah. That's what we
Romney.
need. We need baby boomers. You need the baby boomers.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about
block. So we need to do something to reach baby boomers.
One of the major problems with the military, also, you have a lot of active duty military and federal technicians that would love to support Ron Paul. But if you haven't read my Facebook article, they are not allowed to, in or out of uniform, support or endorse any candidate in public, period,
right,
or be subject to court-martial.
Right.
That's unwritten military rule. They are not allowed to, even in civilian clothing. My husband cannot go down with me to any function that supports or endorses any political candidate, any political function, any political movement, or anything to change legislation. So my work
even though he secretly supports,
neither can my girlfriend.
Actually, he publicly supports it anyway. We just hide him.
Right. But this is but when you get to the 30 to 44 age group, then that gap widens in favor of Gingrich. 37% support him, whereas 19% support Ron Paul. That tells me that the older you are, the less likely you're going to like Ron Paul. The younger you are, you're going to love the guy. Same thing with the 18 to 24 age group, which you aptly noted yourself, Stephen.
The older people have
we're talking
TV longer and they're more brainwashed.
I'm
right.
I'm pretty old.
But there are exceptions to the rule. But, I find it interesting that, it's funny because of all these exit polls, they're saying, I guess, all these exit polls of people under $30,000 as far as total family income for 2011. Gingrich gets 37% of the vote. Romney gets 29%. Santorum gets 15%, and Ron comes in third at 19%. That means that is a very big key difference there. I think the youth vote is what really appeals to Ron the most. I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, obviously.
Well, my point is that the youth vote we have, and the youth are going to bring their own people in because the place that we need to go to look for votes if we want Ron Paul elected is amongst the baby boomers. The only way that we're going to get amongst the baby boomers is if we go to places like the VFW, the senior citizen centers, the different clubs, the retirement, communities. That's the way we're going to win. And if we want to win, that's where our strategy has to go.
Right. I was surprised that even Santorum came in third officially, although unofficially, I think he's probably going to be one of the candidates who's going to drop out.
I'm not surprised.
And if
third, Ron Paul.
I hope.
But you know what you're looking at is you might be looking at the guy who's running for the vice president slot.
Right.
It's hard to see how Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney could put together a team between the two of them.
Right.
So I think Santorum's is a likely candidate to be.
And must I point out that if either one of those candidates get the nomination and not Ron Paul, that guarantees a re-election for Barack Obama.
Right.
Because let's be clear here. Why would any Why would any American worth his salt? Why would any American worth his salt support a candidate like Newt Gingrich or Rick Santorum or Mitt Romney if they've got Barack Obama to do the most amount of damage that these guys can do?
Right.
If I were the average American voter, I would rather, I love this whole idea of voting for the lesser of two evils. Fuck that. I'd rather vote for the most of two evils and let the chips fall where they may.
At least you know what
if it means getting, Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama, I can see the choice clearly. I'd pick Barack Obama over Mitt Romney anytime, any day of the week. At least he's honest.
I'm not voting for any of those guys. If Ron Paul doesn't get the nomination,
no, I would not be voting for any of those guys either. But if I had a shotgun put to my head and said pick one of those two candidates, if I was forced at gunpoint, if necessary, if I meant my life, that is, and I was forced to choose between one of those two candidates, I'd pick Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about Barack Obama and Mitt Romney is they're so similar. You're not going to see any substantial policy change between those two.
The Obama on steroids.
With Gingrich, it's just
that's about it. But they're both the same color inside.
Yeah, essentially, the policies are so close between the two of them that you won't really see any real difference between them.
Right. But I'm not voting for either one. If Ron Paul drops out, if he doesn't get the nomination, I'm going with Gary Johnson because he most reflects the way I feel about how the country should be run. So that's how
keep in mind that even though Gary Johnson would be my second choice, and I was initially involved in the Gary Johnson campaign, he's not going to get the kind of immediate attention even when he was running as a Republican, was trying to get into the debates. I mean, he's only in two of so many debates already that people have forgotten him, and they're thinking, this guy who, even though he was a governor of a state, what's so special about him? The American people are going to think. They're going to, what's he going to do for me?
It's just I'd rather support somebody that supports the Constitution than somebody that doesn't support any part of it. No.
I see where you're going with this. But this is the one thing that I thought was really, really funny. On Fox News on Stossel, they had this colonel Colonel David Hunt. He's the Fox News military analyst who was on with David Henderson, who is an economist for the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School. And they were debating about Ron Paul's military policy, his policy on Iran. This is what Colonel Hunt had to say about Ron Paul. Listen to this.
We're now sitting in the House. They're building a nuclear device. Maybe. Probably. Okay, probably. Rick Santorum says we should bomb them before they do it.
He's as wrong as Congressman Paul. We cannot do a third war in 10 years. And by the way, wouldn't be successful.
Congressman Paul says, look, we can live with it then. What are our choices? Either we bomb them or we can live with it. We live with the Soviets, we can live with them.
The problem we have is Iran's stated policy of destruction of Israel and the killing of Americans in Iraq and the association they have with Iraq. It's a very dangerous and unsettling country who openly supports Hamas and Hezbollah. Hamas is a terrorism state, and it's very difficult to let them have the
Colonel, you've lived most of your life, and I've lived all my life in a world in which two countries had thousands of nuclear weapons aimed at each other. The idea that Iran could get a couple of nuclear weapons and aim them at Israel, which has over 100, and somehow not face retaliation is absurd. The Israelis have second strike capability with 3 nuclear-armed submarines.
That leads to World War III. That's my issue with Iran.
Right.
And Iran.
And that's why they won't do it.
So if we're not going to go and take them out, we have sanctions. I don't see that we have many options. We have a country much bigger than Iraq.
Iran is a superpower in the Middle East. They dictate a lot.
So what are we going to do?
There's economic. There's pressure, religious pressure. There's Chinese. There's Soviet. There's an awful lot we can do that would economic that we're not doing. The last thing we should be doing, we even talked about, is a war with Iran. Oh, by the way, bombing Iran's nuclear facilities is so buried, it would need nuclear capability.
Okay, we agree on that.
Okay, comments on that. You first, Ava. What did you think of what this colonel had to say?
Oh, I've heard that before. About bombing Iran. What colonel? Aren't they both colonels?
No, the one who was arguing against Ron Paul on his foreign policy. He really thinks that Ron Paul is on the wrong side of Iran, that Iran's going to build a nuclear missile at any point. He's going to aim it at the United States and our ally Israel, and we've got to protect Israel's interests.
Wouldn't that be like committing suicide?
Yes.
If they actually did that, wouldn't that be like committing suicide? And I have never heard of any suicide bombers that come from Iran. Have you? There's none.
No, and it's one of the reasons why I think so many Republicans who favor guarding the borders between Afghanistan and Pakistan is so misguided, because they would rather guard those borders than the borders between here and Canada and Mexico, should the terrorists come here through any of those entry points. They are spreading their forces out so thin to the point where we don't even have any protection on our own soil.
Right.
That's
so.
Don't you see? That's the point. That's exactly what they want to do.
Right. I personally think they don't give a rat's ass about national security. I don't think they give a rat's ass about what happens in the United States. It's all political posturing. It's just talking points. It's to make them look so good in front of the camera.
It's
because it's a great. It's also money. Exactly.
It's also money. You're talking about defense spending, and that's where you collect taxes or borrow the money, and you put it into corporations to build tanks.
It's more about offense spending. They want office spending. They want. They don't.
It's a way of doling out about the people's money to the cronies of those who are in power.
Right.
Right. And this is what the conversation continue at this point. You guys are going to love this part here. Check this out.
Let me just bring up, if Ron Paul is, as you and so many Republicans say, just so wrong on this, how come he gets so much support, as we'll see here, from military families?
I get twice as much money from the active military duties than all the other candidates put together. So they're saying that I'm on the right track. They're sick and tired of those wars. They're sick and tired of the nation building and the policing activity.
He got 71% of the money from military, more than John McCain in the last election.
First of all, the military is not a voting bloc. And the other man said...
What do they know that they're supporting?
No, but it's because when somebody's in the United States military, Army, Marines, all of them, that is not, therefore they're always, first of all, right. But secondly, that because you get support vote means it's your right. It's a nice thing to say, I've got a lot more military guys. That doesn't mean, therefore, everything I'm saying, because the military is backing me individually, I'm right.
Oh, absolutely. It's just a really important and interesting indicator that people, when they get to vote with their money, which is one of the biggest votes you do, are voting for Ron Paul.
What do you mean get to vote? Oh, give money.
In other words, it's one thing to say, I like someone. It's another thing to pull out your wallet and actually give them money.
But you're cherry picking. We don't know, for example, with Sergeant Jones, who sends $10, which part of the policy he supports in Paul, and what the governor does.
Okay.
But I think I understand where he's coming from on that standpoint, but he's missing the overall picture, which is the military, by and large, support Ron Paul compared to all of these contenders combined. If the military was so wrong, if Ron Paul is so wrong on the issue, like Brett Baer told Ron Paul at the Fox News debate, saying candidate Ron Paul then was saying that, we should get out of the Middle East, that we should end our incursions into the Middle East. Candidate Ron Paul would be running to the left of Barack Obama on this on Iran.
Right.
Excuse me, Brett. Excuse me, Colonel. But Bob Dole, then presidential hopeful Bob Dole, when he was running up against Bill Clinton, was saying in '96, we shouldn't be nation building.
Right.
Does that mean he was running to the left of Bill Clinton on foreign policy?
Well,
same thing with then candidate George W. Bush before 9/11, before he became this neocon.
Yeah.
He was saying we shouldn't be, nation building.
Right.
Was he running to the left of Bill Clinton on foreign policy? Gee, I didn't see the Republican going after him then. Just because times are different, just because the circumstances have changed somewhat, doesn't mean the principle changes. It means those are changing their tune because it's about political opportunism and it's worse. You were going to say something, Dawn. Go ahead. Dawn?
That wasn't me.
Oh, okay.
Somebody started to say something, but it wasn't me.
Well, okay. But did you want to comment on that?
Do you have 3 hours?
No. Well, we'll try to.
Well, the one thing back in that thing that you were that we were listening to when they were talking about, he gets the military money, but they're wondering where the military vote is. Little tidbit being that I am a military wife, a military mother, a military sister, a military daughter. The majority of the military votes that are taken on military bases are not counted.
Right.
They're destroyed.
Wow.
They're destroyed.
They do not make it to the counting consensus. Like my husband, say your voting time is between 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. You're the only one in the office at the military armory where you're stationed at. You have to be there at 5 a.m. and you don't get off till 8 p.m. So how are you supposed to exercise your right to vote when you're not allowed to leave it alone?
Yeah.
Welcome to what happens. The majority of them can't even get out to vote.
Yeah.
And this is and the reason I knew about the voting in Iraq is because my son worked in the mailroom when he was stationed in Iraq. My oldest son, in the last election, they threw almost 60,000 voting ballots out into the mail to the U.S.
Isn't that
count was done. They didn't even get their absentee vote till after the election was done. So the majority of them didn't even get to vote. And that now I can't say my son's name because that would risk and jeopardize his safety, but that is the issue. Good thing he has a different last name than me.
But
that is the issue and the problem. So that they do support the military. Does a lot of the military service members do support Ron Paul? However, when you're not voted, they send the money because that's the only way they know they can support him because they know their vote won't count. So they can at least get other people to go out and get educated on voting.
That's what the military colonel actually excludes. I mean, he omits the fact that these soldiers cannot vote because they don't.
Well, let me tell you a lot about that military colonel. He's a senior officer. He has his housing paid for. He has his perks, his government credit cards that pays for everything. Your everyday soldier that's out there pounding the dirt, not sitting in air conditioning, actually defending the country, does not make minimum wage, even after, like my husband, that has been in there 17 years. When you count the hours he works, if he were paid on a 40-hour salary, he'd be making $16 an hour. But being that he's not, he doesn't. And unlike contrary to modern belief, we do not get free housing. We do not get free health insurance. We actually have to pay for it just like everybody else. So when you deduct all that, my husband makes about $4 an hour.
And, you know, and all of the
and he's
rhetoric,
stuck on contract and can't
right.
get out.
And all the rhetoric that we've been hearing from the Republicans saying, oh, we're pro-troops, we're pro-military, you know, we care about our troops, that any speaking out against the troops is actually undermining our troops and whatnot. I mean, you know, these Republicans, when was the last time they called for an increase in the troops' pay? When did any of them?
We're on a pay freeze. Didn't you know federal technicians like your National Guardsmen that work technician jobs during the week? Congress got their pay raise, but when Obama said he was going to cut the federal budget, they did the budget increase. My husband got a pay freeze for 5 years, but our insurance went up. So actually what we were making a year ago was more than what we're making now.
Yeah.
That's pretty much true for all federal employees.
Right. Jim, you were a vet.
But why did Congress get a pay raise and they don't pay for their insurance, but now we do?
Exactly. Jim, you were a vet in Operation Desert Storm, I believe, in the first part of the first Iraq War, and you never got a pay increase, if I understand correctly. I think you alluded to this one time when you were in the military service. I mean, did you ever get a wage increase at all? Did you ever get any respect from the Republican establishment then?
The most we would ever get would be a cost of living adjustment annually, which was actually always less than inflation. So you really didn't get a raise. You actually, your money was worth less each year that I was in. The COLA never met the rate of inflation at that point in time.
Yes, your COLA and your BAH and stuff like that.
So I lost money pretty much.
Yeah, see, where what they do with the active duty or the National Guard that are full-time, similar to the Army, they do it different. There no longer is a allowance for housing and cost of living allowance and meal separation pay.
We treat the military worse than Michael Vick treats his dogs. I swear. Actually, to paraphrase what Bill Maher said in one of his stand-up specials, we treat the military the same way Michael Vick treats his dogs. And he's right. He's absolutely right on that point. They treat the military like shit. I mean, we're talking the troops here. The people who are on the ground, hitting the pavement, doing what they were sent there to do in the first place. And these these conservative yahoos who are on talk radio, like Dana Lash, who last week opened her fucking mouth on, you know, the troops pissing on the bodies of these Afghani civilians, these dead Afghani civilians, whom she claims were members of the Taliban. But even if they were, that was never verified. But even if they were, they make a good chunk of the military, the troops look bad, because not all the troops ascribe to that mentality. There are some very good men and women in uniform, like your husband, for instance, Don, who are basically being sullied and smeared because of this whole little quest.
Well, my husband actually got out and went back in just so he could bring my son home when he was wounded in combat, my oldest son, who was just 18. They were sent overseas, and for some reason their military protective gear did not arrive till 3 months afterwards, but my son was already back home in the States within 3 weeks, wounded.
Right. Jim, do you have any questions? Anything you want to add, like comments or questions or anything like that?
Nope. I just, I would revisit the military issue. Yeah, there's definitely no love there, and I'm definitely not going to sit there and pretend like the Republicans are any friends of anybody who ever served in a uniform. When I got sent to Desert Storm, 60% of the gas masks that we were sent with were known to fail. When the troops went back again in 2001, guess what? A lot of those same gas masks were still in the inventory, over 200,000 just in the Department of the Army alone, known to be defective, were still in the inventory and had not been removed. These are the same people who are running around constantly talking about how they are for the troops and anybody who criticizes anything is against them. Well, you're sending people out to fight in a war where the biggest claim is he's got chemical weapons, and you're sending them out with equipment that you know will fail. How in the world does that even classify?
Oh, but they'll make sure that they have internet. Oh, we're spending millions of dollars so they can keep in touch with their family. What good is it going to do to keep in touch with their family if someone lands something chemical right on top of them and they're not going to be coming home? And he's right. They said the equipment that they have, they spend all these money on these fancy planes to make all these trips to drive these dignitaries, fly the dignitaries over there so they can make a good political view when they could have taken that and changed out defective gear and given these soldiers new gear. But no, they've got to make a political support showing for the troops, and they'll pay millions to send these actors and actresses over there and provide all their security, but they won't take those millions and put them into taking care of the troops, properly feeding the troops, and properly recognizing when they've had when they're suffering from trauma and emotional over there, and get them out of there and send them home.
Bring them all home.
Because
bring them all home.
Bring them all home.
Bring them all home so they can start cleaning up or spend that time putting it back into our own country instead of everybody else's.
Right.
Right. And here's another important point that I think that we should be talking about here, and I think it's very interesting. I mentioned this earlier. It's nice to know that Rick Perry dropped out of the race. Yeah, no more Ricky. I mean, he was, like the guy at the bar who looked like, he was the only guy at the bar who was trying to hit on a chick, the big bussy chick right next to him. And the second he starts grabbing her ass, she just throws water in his face and walks away. And the bartender just basically serves him a drink, and he's flabbergasted, like, what the hell just happened here? And he can't get laid. Okay. But it's great to know that Rick Perry is out of the game. But now it turns out he's supporting Gingrich. I just love this. Days before and even weeks before that, they're all knocking each other. They're all attacking each other, But then they'll turn around and they'll say, I love Newt Gingrich. He's a great guy. Next. Here's another interesting story that did come out. I'm sure you guys heard.
Know where to go.
Well,
yeah.
With Gingrich, it's going to be interesting. Is this guy going to be able to hold it together, or is it going to have a meltdown in the middle of the primaries? And then you have Mitt Romney. It's fairly obvious that the Republicans would like to have someone that they call a conservative, whatever that is.
But that's the thing about Mitt Romney. He's the Mormon with the magic underpants.
Right.
And I'm not talking,
So that leaves you with Santorum, and he's not, bringing. What are the outside chances if we see a meltdown by my our Georgia friend, that we don't see someone like Jeb Bush come in?
I think it's too late to bring anybody else into the game at this point.
Yeah.
Months ago, there was talk about Chris Christie entering the race. They were trying to draft him in, and then he said, "No, I got my own problems to deal with in New Jersey. As governor, I've got to focus on those things. I'm not running for president." And I thought that was probably the best thing he ever did, was not getting into the field. And
I think it's an outside chance, but if it goes down towards the end and you have a brokered convention, then all bets are off at that point.
All bets are off.
That's what we're trying for, is brokered convention, in case anybody didn't notice.
Oh, I've been noticing very hard, by the way.
Yeah.
But here's another interesting thing. I think I sent this out in an email as an added bonus. A Demo Voluntarius, who in Keene, New Hampshire, was actually being found guilty for his chalking incident in Keene, New Hampshire, and I guess this is stemmed from the fact that he was engaged in some sort of chalking activity in New Hampshire. This was really not looking good for him as far as what was going to happen, but this is probably a very important situation that's brewing here, because this is coming from copblock.org, where apparently there was a video, a serious look at the actions. Apparently, he charged Mike as an adult and charged him with 3 counts of wiretapping, crimes the state says justifies caging at your expense for 21 years. And, the Chalking A trial, okay, there is this situation brewing. And my question is, aren't these bogus charges? I think they're bogus, and I think that he really should have a better. I think what they should do is, if you're going to go in front of a judge, you're better off getting an attorney. But trying to represent yourself. Always. Yeah, you're always better off getting an attorney. And he said here, I think a lawyer would be beneficial to ensure fair pretrial hearings and proper, in their eyes, procedure during the trial. Considering this will be an expectation of privacy trial and that public officials have none, it would be more difficult than my Greenfield trial, yet a win here could do wonders for activists in the Shire attempting to change coercive government actions. I guess there was a wiretapping, like I said, involved, and I think that this is going to. This is really showing.
This is the interesting thing. This was a video, not a wiretap, right?
Right.
So what wire got tapped? I mean, it doesn't even stand up to logic if you say wiretap is where you're sending communication across the wire from point A to point B, and someone gets in the middle of that and makes a copy of it. This is a case of where someone has got a video camera who's observing something and makes a video. It seems to me this has got a real First Amendment press. How would you define this guy not being a member of the press and this not being a legitimate film to have?
Right. Any comments on this, Don? Did you happen to read this story? I was asked to bring this up by Clyde Voluntarius, and I decided, okay, we'll discuss this on the show tonight. Have you taken a look at the video? I seeing a good chunk of the video so far. I mean, the charges are very specious. not to mention very questionable, if I may say so. But it doesn't matter what you may personally think. All that matters is how the judge is going to side with the cops, because they always side with the cops no matter what.
Well, there's going to be
that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a pretty lame case.
That you have a law, and if the law says something, and that's what the judge and the jury are going to compare it against. And so, if there is a law which says you can't make a video of a police doing their job, and you make a video of the police doing the job, and you get arrested for that, you get prosecuted for that. And it's not really up to the original trial judge to determine constitutionality of that law. It's merely, to see if the law or the cases, if the charges stand against that law.
Right.
But as you go into the appellate courts, that's where the law itself gets challenged.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, you've got something else going on here. This videotape's out there. There's that cop who's beating the hell out of somebody, it sure looks like. This issue and this tape is not going to go away. They're going to have a hard time, I would suspect, if there's a civil litigation against the police department of trying to say, well, no, that was an illegally made film and therefore it's not admissible. I mean, that type of stuff. But in the meantime, there's also the court of public opinion, and that film is out there. And every time they make a comment to it or they proceed in action like this, more people watch it.
Yeah.
It's the old, there is no such thing as bad publicity. Well, in something like this, the more publicity there is, the more people are going to see it.
Right. Jim, your thoughts on this particular situation? Any questions you have on?
Well, police state-wise, I'm just wondering how much worse it's going to get. The present atmosphere in the U.S. just is really, really scary, and I'd like to hear from the panelists as to where they think it's going, and what do you see as our escape from where we're at right now?
Let's start with you, Don.
In reference to what specifically? It was muffled the last part of his conversation, so I didn't hear. Are we still talking about Clyde and the situation with the chalking?
Right.
A lot of what's going to end up happening to that is, one, there is no case precedence on there that I could find so far, because usually that's how they handle things. They can't make a conscientious decision on their own, just like they can't wipe their ass on their own. So they'll have to go look and see if there's precedence on it. If not, they're going to go with what will look good for the community. So they're going to, even though it was something simple, and everything that's happened, it's in a sense a victimless crime, but they have to make somebody look bad, because now they have to set precedents for this.
Right. How about you, Ava?
Well, I don't know anything about what you're talking about, so I really can't comment on that.
Okay. How about you, Shotgun Susie? Your thoughts on the growing expansion of the police state, as Jim inquired.
Oh man, yeah. How long do you got?
Not nearly as enough time as I would love to, but
exactly.
Yeah. So
I do have one last comment about it.
So did any of you all talk?
I have one thing to say is,
did anybody else go out and talk and protest?
What's that, ma'am?
Did any of y'all else? We showed in support of what was going on is we actually chalked a lot of the sidewalks all over Kansas City, Missouri. And actually, what was really interesting is the police department stood around and watched it, and they let us. They even offered their sidewalks, because they said it was free speech, and they were not going to stop us. And they felt what was happening, and people being prosecuted.
That's right.
I read you on Facebook.
And we chalked
your post.
Yeah, we chalked. Oh, did you see the chalking video? The video of Occupy where we actually chalked the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Because around here, but in another state like that, God knows what's going to happen. I did notice that Cop Block did put a new thing on the response to notice of fine from Chalking 8 that was just posted January 11th. I don't know if any of y'all, I'll post the link on my Facebook so you can see it. But they were talking about that same incident.
Right.
And and what's going on centered all around that, and then the cops not liking the videotaping. But I'll send you the links if anybody wants them to follow through with some other stories on it.
Good.
I do want to get. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, good. I'd like to read that because I don't know anything about what you're talking about.
Well, it's about the.
Well, he also received wiretapping charges too. He received wiretapping charges along with that, I believe, didn't he?
Yeah, he was,
videotaping.
He was tracking the city of Keene, and I guess one corner of the street or something like that. I think that's what was going on there, and apparently he was found guilty in the verdict there. But then again, we're not dealing with private property here. We're dealing with government property, and I have no problems with defacing government property.
Well,
also technically,
it isn't permanent. You have to deface something.
Not only that, but
consider you can take a bucket of water and wash it away.
Right.
Yeah. City sidewalks are not government property. City sidewalks are property of the taxpayers. The city is only the custodian. That property belongs to the people that pays the taxes on it.
Yeah, that's kind of my attitude too. I do have one other comment to kind of maybe help pull us all together. That is, if you think this country is becoming more of a police state, then you should think about how is this going to affect you, and how does one invest your savings to take advantage of it. And one of the other stories that came out this last week is that Dunkin' Donuts is doing a major expansion.
Yeah.
Okay, so how is that? I guess I'm missing your point there.
Who eats the donuts?
Oh, okay.
Oh, you mean the cops? Okay.
Yeah, there you go. The police. If you're going to if you're going to have to be a police state, you have to hire more police, and there'll be a larger demand for donuts. And Dunkin' Donuts apparently has got the foresight to
expand.
The pigs. You probably remember them as the pigs.
Well, not. Yeah. But he also had the wiretapping charges with it. That was in relation to he was I believe somebody was videotaping him, or they were videotaping while doing it. Is that where the wiretapping charges came from?
I think the wiretapping charges have to do with at the point where the police became involved, and they were filming and recording, so you get the sound recording as well. And so they may be charging that as two separate offenses, one for the video and one for the sound.
Huh.
Well, the thing is what I don't understand. Now, see, in Missouri, there is, I know each state has their own law, but in Missouri it's not illegal.
A jury actually found him guilty, or was it just a judge?
I think it was the judge found him guilty, because usually in Keene, in Manchester, and I think this was in Manchester, if I'm not mistaken, or was it Keene? Anyway, it was Manchester. Okay. Apparently, there were no jurors at this trial.
Mm. Well,
that's convenient.
But how many months has it been? Essentially, the question is this a felony?
Well, no. It doesn't say. I mean, it does say that he was given. Well, actually, it does say here he was given the max sentence with 10 months of it stayed for 2 years good behavior for resisting his arrest. I mean, he was resisting arrest according to the eyes of the state. So that that seems to be a very big issue for a lot of the Keeniacs, for a lot of the Keene activists in the Free State Project there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a big issue for them for a long time.
Well, I think
now,
as activists, we're overlooking a big power that we all have that none of us, really know about, and that's jury nullification of these piss poor laws that they're, shoving down our throat. Our juries go in there and think that they're just an arm of the prosecution, that they can't decide for themselves whether a law is bullshit or not. That they just, how many times have you heard a juror say, I had to vote him guilty, he did it. Even though I think that maybe he was justified for doing it, We don't understand that when we go in that jury box, we're not accountable to the law or to the judge or to the prosecutor or to the defense attorney. We vote whatever way we want to.
Well, here's another interesting point that it gets into the legal system, which is, think about what happened when Casey Anthony last year was accused of murder during her murder trial. I mean, remember when her daughter was missing for 30 days, and at the end of that 30 days, she never reported her, up until the end of the month, she reported her daughter was missing, and they found her body, and the state was putting on this big sideshow that somehow she was responsible for the murder of her daughter because they found chlorine in the back of her SUV, yet the state couldn't prove beyond reasonable doubt.
Right.
Because the evidence was so circumstantial that she must have murdered her child. Yet when the jurors, including when the jurors deliberated, and I think they deliberated for quite a few hours, and then after that, they came up with not guilty on all counts, except for one, but it was already for times already served, and she was let go at that point. A lot of women, single mothers, were pissed off at her, and they wanted to throw stones at this woman, and they really were foaming at the mouth, bloodthirsty, because poor old Kaylee Kaylee Anthony, she deserved better than this, because who cares if there was no evidence that the mother did it? We know she did it because there's just no way she couldn't have done it.
Right.
But the state couldn't prove it.
Right.
And that's where you have this incompetent organization known as the government, incapable of proving a case. Same thing with the Michael Jackson's doctor, although they finally were able to convict this guy because they wanted to nail something, because they think this guy went out of his way to poison Michael Jackson to death. But still, it was Michael Jackson who chose to be on these pain medications. He could have gotten the help, but they were blaming this doctor for it. Right. But they were putting it all on this doctor.
Everybody knew he was an addict, and they just didn't care because they liked spending his money.
Right.
His family, they knew they could have gotten him help. His family knew he was an addict. They did absolutely nothing about it, but it helped spend his money.
Right. And on top of that, and this is on the heels. Right. This is on the heels of the child molestation trials that he had, the two of them, in which one of them, it turned out, was a phony. The kid lying about it. One kid was lying about it. And then it turned out that the other kid, something could have happened. But this guy, I swear, before he died, just loved going to bed with little kids, but the state couldn't prove that he was doing it, although I think he was molesting these kids personally. But I have no way of proving that. But that goes without saying. But here's another interesting thing that happened this week. Everybody heard it Tuesday. Or actually, it was Wednesday. Correction. Wikipedia, Amazon, Google, and a number of websites went dark because of the Stop Online Piracy Act and the Protect IP Act. And I have to tell you that I thought it was the ballsiest, boldest, bravest thing that these websites, that these organizations have actually done. And that the sponsors of the Recording Industry Association of America, the Motion Picture Association of America, were leading the fight to stop what? IP laws being violated because people were downloading illegal shit off of, say, LimeWire, or which probably will be the next site being attacked. A couple of years ago, one court, I think it was in Sweden, wanted to take legal action against the Pirate Bay people because of the illegal file sharing stuff that goes on all the time. And there just really is no evidence that they're losing billions of dollars in profits over copyrighted shit that is actually being sold in the market. I mean, they're targeting people because of songs, CD sales going down, but that's been going down for years. And
did you read the small print on that also, what SOAP was doing? It was a legislation that they were going about everything the wrong way. What they're doing is they were trying to force internet service providers and search engines to force to move their websites and deem guilty of something and shut down and seize their website and domain name if they so happen to have a link to another site which could possibly contain allegedly illegal content, not realizing that when you subscribe to an internet domain service, you have your domain name, but you also, in order to get it at a discount rate, since nobody can afford anything at full price anymore, you have to succumb to advertisements being run. You don't choose those advertisements, so in a sense, a lot of smaller businesses could have been shut down on just out of the government's overregulation. Oh, you might have a link to somebody that's stealing something. We're shutting you off.
Guys, go ahead. Your thoughts.
Which is wrong.
Keep talking, guys. Ava, what do you think?
Well, I agree with everybody on the panel. I mean, it's crazy what's going on, and nobody would have known anything about it unless we were paying attention to what was going on in Washington, D.C., because they were trying to pass it underneath, the radar. So, I mean, we just have to be attentive, and we need to get pissed off when the government does stuff to us instead of just taking it like we have been for years.
They wanted to shut down the way we communicate with each other.
Right. So it's crazy. But and there's a couple of new bills that one 3166, the one that where they're going to strip us of our citizenship if we're known terrorists, and then they say terrorists are anybody that stores food or talks bad about the government, and who's going to decide that,
Right.
So.
Harry.
Right. And this is the big concern I have about SOPA and PIPA, is that they can tell internet service providers, hey, you need to block certain people because what if they say something that's particularly damaging, not just to these companies that are basically in bed with the government, particularly with the Obama administration. And there are plenty of them who are like this, but what about the government? If you say something particularly bad about Obama, if you say something particularly bad about what's going on with the war and whatnot, the SOPA law, if it passed constitutional muster, if PIPA passed along with it, with constitutional muster, it would have been a nightmare for the internet. Imagine what they could do if they could, say, block porn, like adult porn with women with small tits, like they did in Australia, for instance. Women who actually appear on porno sites with A cup or B cup, it's considered illegal because it looks like because she looks like a 14 or 15-year-old who hasn't physically developed, so therefore it's considered child pornography. I mean, they can go that far with SOPA and PIPA, and that's the big issue there. So they can take it to the most absurd, the most extreme level, and they'll try to defend it no matter which way it goes. And even I noticed Rick Santorum was talking on both sides of his mouth during the CNN debate. He was going, well, I'm for free speech, and I think the law was wrong, but still, I don't think the internet should. I don't think the internet is a playground for anybody to take anybody's property and do what they want with it. To paraphrase what he's saying there, that anybody should, the internet isn't free, that the internet isn't you can't just take what's not yours, or, that the internet should somehow be regulated because, these companies are losing billions of dollars in profits over copyright usage. Excuse me, but show me proof that Paramount Pictures, Sony Music, or even, say, the video game companies are losing money over copyrighted shit being pirated. Maybe that's happening in China, but that stuff doesn't roll very well here in the U.S. And
but
who's going to want to buy?
Pirated songs do.
Huh?
I mean, how many?
Pirated songs?
Oh, absolutely. And as we move more into electronic publishing for books, if you're an author and you're hoping to make your living by selling books, as we go electronic, it's going to be a lot harder to control that. It doesn't surprise me that they're losing money, but the thing is, you can't say, well, the Constitution doesn't work anymore, and therefore we're going to write a law to get around it. You have to go back and you have to revisit the whole, right of free speech and all the rest of this, and you have to visit the right of properties and the rest of this stuff about who owns the internet and the rest of this. And there's a huge amount of case law that you're going to have to revisit to find ways that balance freedom of speech and the ability to communicate with, with issues like how does an author make a living. How does and the authors are the ones who are in the tough shape. The musician at least can go out and do a live performance and make a good living.
Right.
But an author, you're
or like
host.
Authors with 4 books out, I know what that's like. But you do like I do. Being that I maintain my copyright by paying a lot of the privilege right on that out front myself. My book is not available. None of my books are available in ebook for that specific reason. Then it can't be bootlegged. And no royalty loss there.
Yeah, but then you have, the negative that goes along with that one is that you have a reduced market. As more and more people are going to the Kindles and things like this, you're going to have a paper book and nobody's going to want it. And so you get
that hasn't been an issue at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But today's 2012, 2020, it's going to be a different world.
Now, when it becomes, then I might consider something different. But then it is going to hurt because you can already now you can share Kindle books, but now they're limiting the amount of books you can share, and they're wanting to tack an additional fee onto that. And none of the writers or authors see anything from that. And you could it's very easy to modify it, a file, and transfer it over. You just move your SD card from one book to another and then upload it to the person's computer. So happens with everything.
Well, this is the thing that really gets me. And I think that a lot of people would actually share this with me. The whole copyright situation is a very, very touchy subject that gets a lot of people up in arms over, politically speaking. I had a very interesting conversation with Sharon Presley a while back, and she has written a book or two, I believe, and she says that, well, we need IP laws. We need, our copyrights protected and whatnot. But something, I did point out to her that before copyrights were invented, before, IP law was ever an invention, Shakespeare adapted his works from other authors when he was writing his plays. Had copyrights existed in his day, can you imagine the number of lawsuits he would have been hit in his day?
Yep.
Had he published them?
Oh, I know. And well, my theory is if somebody really needs an ebook copy of my book or cannot afford it and really has to have it, then let them have it. Because there's got to be a reason for the type of books I write that they're desperate to have a copy of it. Because of the type of books they are. But right. I could see, I'm just like, they need the book that bad enough, and they don't have the money, let them go for it.
Well, it's interesting that we're discussing this because an RIAA spokesman, Jonathan Lammy, actually attacked a number of the critics over SOPA and PIPA after Wikipedia blacked out. He wrote on his Twitter tweet, after Wikipedia blacked out somewhere, a student today is doing original research and getting her facts straight. Perish the thought, tweeted Jonathan Lammy, Senior Vice President of the Communication of the Recording Industry Association of America. Incidentally, in the same article, it says here, the RIAA has been one of the biggest supporters of SOPA and PIPA, lobbying aggressively and speaking out against internet piracy. They even donated thousands to SOPA author Representative Lamar Smith, a Republican from Texas. He later deleted the tweet, but Gizmodo took a screenshot as evidence. It just shows that these people are really willing to, if he really didn't want his comment, his embarrassing tweet to be out there, then he should never have published it. Number one, and number two, why didn't he just stand by his statement? Why did he have to delete it? Could it be that he was attacked for taking that fiery position against the critics who were concerned about the dire effects of that proposed bill if they ever became law under President Obama? Perish the thought. Your thoughts on this, Shotgun Susie? Go ahead.
On SOPA and PIPA, and I think Ava is correct that we need to get everybody worked up about everything, the NDAA especially, and this new one that's coming out. That's to go along with the NDAA, so that we can be deemed, we can have our citizenship stripped from us. Then they don't have to worry about whether we're citizens or not. They can just blow us away at will.
Right. I mean, even Hollywood threatened to withdraw funding for Obama's re-election campaign because he backpedaled from his legislation that he was going to sign into law. I mean, he backpedaled from supporting it. And I wonder how much that's going to cost him in campaign re-election funds. Your thoughts on this, Ava? I think that SOPA and PIPA are really becoming increasingly unpopular with Americans, and they're sick and tired of the RIAA's lies. Wouldn't you say?
I would say definitely they are. Well, I think the American people in general are sick of all the lies. It's not just, the government lying to us, it's the media lying to us, it's corporations, positioning themselves to take advantage of us. And all of these guys are, the things that are the people that are supposed to protect us and watch out for our best interests are all in bed with the people that, would do us harm. I mean, financially anyway.
Right.
So.
Right.
And if we don't get outraged, we should be as more pissed about our votes not being counted than we are about SOPA, because what does it matter? They're going to pass whatever law they want to, and they're going to put people in there whoever they want to. And if we don't, aren't pissed about whether our votes are counted correctly or not, I mean, aren't we?
We should be.
Or what?
I would. But I would kind of sort of take issue with you on that point to a certain extent, because SOPA and PIPA, if we're passed, could easily be used to shut down the internet, and they could censor everybody, which means we would be subjected to the lamestream media's reporting on the votes being tabulated on the primary night, because the lamestream media can't live without the viewership.
So what you're saying is that what we hear from the media is more important than whether our vote are counted properly or not?
Yeah, it's a matter of communication. That if you observe a ballot not being counted properly, and you have no way of informing the rest of the country that ballot was not counted correctly, then what was the real advantage of you having seen it? And so if you don't have a way outside of the mainstream media to transmit that information to a very broad audience, then it makes it a lot easier for them to hide and to cover up stuff.
Well, they hide and cover up stuff now, and we don't have those laws.
Yes, they do, but it's a lot better than it was back in the 1940s, where the sheriffs used to take the ballot boxes directly and control it and stuff them. The situation is a lot is heavily improved.
I've seen that we have bank tellers, or ATMs that don't lose a penny or a dime, and they're all over the country, but we can't have a machine, a die-bolt machine or whatever, a voting machine that tallies the votes properly.
Those ATM machines have been hacked and money has been stolen from them. They're not as reliable as you might like to think. And that's one of the concerns about the computerized voting is the ability to hack the system and change the results. And so with Diebold, for instance, it's a closed source that only the company that's writing the code has access to the code. So
even before Diebold, even before electronic voting, the system was very much plagued with a lot of problems. I mean, look at what happened in 2000, for instance, in Florida.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It was
absolutely.
ripe with,
always has,
with a lot of...
Just don't worry about it. Okay.
I'm not saying I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm not saying that we shouldn't worry about the vote. I'm saying yes, the vote is important.
To me, the voting,
that the information is just as important as the voting.
Yeah.
That way,
you need to have observers at all the polling stations and all the precincts.
Well, that doesn't work because then they change the rules like they did in Iowa.
Well,
because Ron Paul.
But what happens is when you have observers there, those observers are essentially functioning as reporters. They can collect the information, they can take the photographs, and they can and you can pull that information together because you've got this tremendous method of communicating.
And they can blog about it. I mean,
and they can blog about it. Absolutely. And so it's becoming a lot harder for the voting. It's not impossible for them to pull off voting shenanigans, but it's becoming a lot harder. And the more people you have out there watching for it, the harder it gets.
Right, Don, you have your concerns about SOPA. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, I just gave you my thoughts on that.
Oh, never mind. Okay, you're right.
Well, that's like the caucus, the primaries. Are they going to be anything like the caucuses, though, as far as going in? They limit who gets in, who gets out. You're not allowed to have your cell phones on. You're not allowed to have any cameras or media to document anything unless you have an official press pass. And that's very hard to get very many activists that have that.
Here's another big thing that we should be concerned about, which is the federal government, particularly the FBI and the RIAA, the same organization that was behind SOPA and PIPA, and not to mention the Department of Justice shutting down Mega Upload, which coincides with this entire discussion about SOPA and PIPA, because this is a first-step effort for them to begin censoring the Internet. Because the bill didn't pass, because it was set aside, it was tabled, it's, right now at this point, it's dead on arrival, but still, they're taking efforts to basically shut down websites. They don't even need a law like SOPA and PIPA to do this. They can actually take action even without a law. So what is the law is just basically to show legitimacy to the state itself. So therefore, they already shut down Mega Upload, which is the site like like Lime Torrents or what used to be Napster, by the way.
Oh, it's the same thing as Ares, run out of Argentina.
Or even the Pirate Bay. It's very similar to that. And on top of that, and what's so exciting is that the group Anonymous actually shut down the websites of the RIAA, the Department of Justice, and groups that supported pulling the plug on Mega Upload.
Yeah, and there were some other consequences too. That Mega Upload was not just about sharing movies or something like that. Mega Upload was about how do I move. I have 10 gigabytes of data that I need to move from my office to my customer's office. And how do I do that? Well, one way to do that was to set up an account and me to move that data up and them to pull it down. And that's business-related data. It's got nothing to do with anyone's IP other than my own. And so when they shut down Mega Upload and all those files, if someone was in the middle of transferring files or was using it as their backup and storage facility, they lost that.
Right.
There could be far damages, far exceeding.
Well, that's because they want you to use Carbonite. They want you to use Carbonite's temporary storage, which is a subsidiary company that supports a lot of the government infiltrating things. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't duplicate copies and ship it to some government office.
Yeah, and run their filters on and see what's in it.
Well, look at what the Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security have been doing as far as setting up accounts on Twitter and Facebook to monitor what's being uploaded and what's being shared on there.
Well, you saw my comment on that when my Facebook was lagging last week. It says, "Dear Homeland Security and government staff, my Facebook, my Kingdoms of Camelot is lagging."
Ava, any comments you want to share on this? Because I think this is very crucial.
Well, I was away, so I wasn't listening to you. Sorry. I had to go take a break.
It's a First Amendment issue. Get on it, girl.
Well, it's SOPA and PIPA. That's going to worry the shit out of you.
Well,
but then again,
it's the First Amendment. They've already got the 4th, 5th, 6th, and the 14th or whatever, and they're we want to get the 2nd. They're working on the 1st. They want them all.
Yeah. Well, I believe all of this is part of a plan to just take us into complete fascism or corporatism. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's just
right.
If people don't,
it kind of reminds me of fundamentalism.
Exactly.
They're trying to get you into ultimate submission.
Right.
Jim, my partner in crime, your thoughts on PIPA and Mega Upload and what these groups are doing to them. Go ahead.
It's just a backdoor to be able to do 18,000 other different things. And, of course, if you look at all the people that are pushing it, I haven't done it myself, but if you look at who their largest corporate donors are onto campaigns, you'll see a lot of the same groups. So they're just pulling the strings on their little puppets in Congress to, protect them and give them all kinds of different, little free passes to obliterate smaller competitors and to, basically go around, throw their weight around, scare the hell out of everybody, and continue to keep their dead media alive a little bit longer. I don't remember where I saw it, but somebody basically said to the effect of, if you censor the Internet, we'll just build another Internet around you. And in my opinion, that's what's going to happen. There'll be a black market Internet. Take it over.
Well, this is interesting. According to the same article from the Telegraph, the UK paper, reporting about, Hollywood now backing off on supporting Obama because of his about face on his support for SOPA and PIPA. In 2008, Hollywood and Silicon Valley donated approximately $9 million. That's about 5.8 million pounds to Obama's 2008 campaign. As of now, they've donated around $4 million this time. He's expecting much more to come in the next over several months. And here's an interesting statistic. This week, after visiting Disney World in Florida to promote tourism, he attended a $35,800 per ticket fundraiser at the home of director Spike Lee in New York. First Lady Michelle Obama is expected in Hollywood on January 31st for 2 lucrative private fundraisers at the home of supporters. Because of this, he's getting half of what he accumulated in 2008. I wonder if it's because Hollywood is now becoming and growing tired of Obama. Is that the case? That seems like the only reason to me. But
I think you're right, Todd. There's several things that the Obama did to alienate the liberal left, and some of the telecommunication laws that he supported. The Justice Department cracking down on marijuana in this state. He is making some cold, calculated political decisions and it's going to cost them.
But I don't.
And it won't cost them enough to lose the election, but it'll cost them.
Right. You were going to say.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Shotgun Susie. Final comment on that.
It's Ava.
Ava.
Well, I think it is the only one that was going to be able to draw any votes away from the Democrats was Ron Paul anyway. So I think that, all the Republicans need to remember there is only 47 million registered Republicans, and there's 63 million registered Democrats. The Republican Party, in order to win anything, has to draw votes from the Democratic Party. So,
right.
Even with all of the independents, if all of the independents voted for them, they would still come up short.
In every election is divided 40-20-20.
Yep.
3 independents, 20% Republicans, 20% Democrats.
Right. Well, this has been a fiery panel.
Independents, you get a spattering of the other two, you're going to win.
Right. This has been a fiery panel. Thank you, Don Echo, for being on the air. Thank you, Stephen Meyer. Thank you, Shotgun Susie. And thank you, Ava, Indiana. Jim and I are going to go into an extended edition segment here. Jim, don't go. Well, I guess your thoughts on tonight's show so far. What do you got to say there?
Great show. Great guest. Glad we had an impromptu member of the panel join us. Hopefully she can come back again. She was definitely really interesting, and definitely liked all the discussion around Ron Paul. Liked the discussion around Romney and Gingrich, and getting into SOPA was good as well. So great show you set up tonight, Todd. Todd.
Oh yeah. It was a fiery panel that we had tonight. Here's your thoughts on the debates overall. I think it's a pretty clear-cut indicator that this is nothing but the Shrine Circus and Barnum and Bailey's act put together, putting on a very bad performance. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it's a dying elephant is what we're witnessing, thrashing around, and that party is just not going to be the same. I really don't see them being the driving political force in the rest of the 21st century. I don't.
Right.
And what we're witnessing right now is just the denial stage.
I kind of wonder what this means for Ron Paul in the grand scheme of things, because I'm getting sick and tired of the bubbleheads on TV going, Ron Paul isn't going to win the nomination. I don't think Ron Paul is going to win the nomination. I think it's going to be one of the big candidates. He's just totally unelectable. I'm sorry, but we're still early in the process where we're trying to vet exactly what candidate is actually going to be going up against Barack Obama in October and November, that you have the gall and the audacity to make these claims with nothing to substantiate it whatsoever. I mean, you have no way. You have no credibility as far as your prediction making is concerned. It's totally laughable, Jim. These people just really don't know what they're talking about, wouldn't you say?
It'd be interesting to see how much Ron Paul's share of the vote count gets in a couple states after a few more candidates drop out, because he may pick up a sizable share. So we just got to wait and see once there's fewer candidates as to what he's doing, how he's performing at the ballot box.
Right. Your thoughts on Rick Perry dropping out?
Bye-bye. Won't miss you.
Yeah, really. Newt Gingrich's wife saying that he wanted an open marriage. Wow. What do you say to that, Jim?
Yeah, I kind of, from a personal standpoint, could care less, but from a political standpoint, the Christian conservatives and all of the pro-family and moral high ground that Republicans are always on. It's amusing to see this come out.
And I'm glad that you brought this up because, when John Keane asked him that first question, he was irate. I mean, he was like a bloodthirsty samurai warrior threatening to lop your head off if you so much as even approached to that issue. And when John King did that, he just wanted to cut his head off. Excuse me, but because you're running for president of the United States and you went after Bill Clinton and you were getting head by a former intern of yours, I say that question deserves to be asked because you're fair game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. He made an issue of it himself with a former president who was the sitting president at the time. So he just gets to suck it up and put on his big boy panties.
Ron Paul being booed by the South Carolina audience of the Fox News debate for supporting the Golden Rule. I don't know what to say to that. Do you, Jim?
Yeah, South Carolina is just a weird state. I mean, you're talking about a state where there's a city where the name is spelled de Bordeaux, like in French, and it's pronounced Dibidoo. So, that's whatever. That's South Carolina.
And, I really think it goes without saying that, they were attacking him for rejecting the U.S. government's claim of Iran's nuclear weapons capability. They pretty much wanted they were looking at Ron Paul like he was a three-headed dragon they wanted to slay in front of a sorcerer. I mean, I just don't understand these people. Do you, Jim?
No, I don't understand them, but they're all better Americans than I could ever hope to be, so I'll just have to defer to their judgment.
Let's see here. About tonight's primary votes. How did you feel when you saw the vote totals? When I was reading them, it was not a surprise, was it?
Nope, not really a surprise. I expected Romney to do a little better than he did. I expected it to be a little bit closer, but not a big surprise there. But South Carolina is not nearly as important as they think they are, so we'll have to see what the rest of the states do.
It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. You can have all the primaries and the caucuses you want, but it's the delegates that come out smelling like a rose. And Ron has so many delegates. It's the primaries are just nothing but posturing. It's just to make it look like it's legitimate when really the whole system isn't. Isn't that true?
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely. Until you actually have a candidate selected, and that's who the person is going to be going up against the Democrats. All it is right now is just a bunch of talk.
Oh, and boo at the Keene, New Hampshire court for finding Ademo guilty on his Chalk 8 trial. I hope he really gets out of that one, the wiretapping and all. But yeah, the whole thing with SOPA. Your thoughts on Ademo and SOPA and PIPA? What do you think?
All kinds of bad legislation. I thought with the Republicans taking over half of Congress that shit like that would be over with. Aren't they supposed to be the more responsible party? They don't fuck people over. Bunch of damn liars. Anyway, and with the chalking, it's just another indication of how far this country's gone in the wrong direction. You can pretty much go to jail for looking at a cop the wrong way anymore.
Mm-hmm. And finally, the U.S. government, after having shut down Mega Upload with the help of the RAA, the MPAA, I'm sure, and of course, they were supporting SOPA and PIPA. And shutting down Mega Upload, actually, the only good thing that's come out of it is that Anonymous went after them and pulled the plug on them. What do you think of it all?
I think it's the state of things to come. They think, these clueless wonders think that they're going to be able to control the internet and everything on it. And this is just one group fucking with them. And can you imagine when it gets to be even more people who are fed up and they start fighting back, and there's an actual real internet war? Because an internet war is coming. We haven't had one yet. And when we do, it's going to be ugly, and there's going to be a lot of people get a reality check.
Oh, yeah. One way or the other, it's going to happen. What kind of people do you want to see throughout the rest of the season? I would love to see Wendy McElroy as a panelist on the show again. That or an interview guest spot. Dawn's rape survivor special episode comes on Thursday at AIDS. So would you be interested in coming on for that one? And would you be able to have time? And also your ideas, what we can do as far as earning revenue and not to mention the kind of guests and topics that we can bring up on the show. And I don't know about you, but I would love to have Ron Paul on this show. If we just somehow could get a hold of his handlers and let them know, Ron, we want you on the show. We want you on the air. I think that would just be historic for me. I'd be totally elated. Thoughts, questions, remarks?
Just good show. We'll see what we can do about getting some more guests added to the pool. It's always nice to bring back some old friends and then introduce them to some new friends and see how that mix works. Assuming my work schedule worked out, I definitely want to be there for that show on Thursday. And I think that covers it for this week.
All right. Well, anyway, I think we've talked about what we had to talk about here. Thank you so much, everybody. We will be back on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Jim, I hope you can make it, and make sure you get some questions written out So that would be great. And any final comments you want to give before we leave here?
Yep. Don't believe the hype. Congress being taken over again and largely under the control of the Republican Party has done absolutely nothing to bring anything resembling liberty back into this country. So when you hear a conservative talk about, look, yeah, we're taking back the White House, just roll your eyes and try not to stab them in the eye with something sharp, because that violates the non-aggression principle. I know it feels good to think about that, but don't do it. You're dealing with people with infantile political theories, and
here's another right. I wanted to bring something up which I think has been a big concern for me, which is this Facebook group called Stop Ron Paul 2012. And it's set up by people like the likes of this one individual who has a beef with Ron Paul on just about anything he says. Aaron Bitterman, who basically opposes Paul because of his opposition to the Israeli government, to Israel, i.e. the Israeli government. And, of course, you've got another group called the Stop Ron Paul 2012. And then you've got Ron Paul Haters Watch, which is the group I started. And to actually counter the bullshit arguments made by that group. And you've got Bruce Cohen from California. You've got a number of people in there who are heavily anti-Ron Paul and pro-big conservative progressivism. Your thoughts on that?
It'll be interesting to see, these groups competing with each other on Facebook with the different philosophies. In the end, it needs to be about liberty and not about one person, in my opinion. So hopefully people can get back together after this election is over and get back to the cause of seeing what we can do to restore some freedom in this country.
Absolutely, brother. Amen. Amen. All right, everybody. See ya next week on Saturday night at 10 p.m. Night.